Ladies, gentlemen, I've gathered you here to discuss our new fantasy skirmish wargame, the follow-up to Infinity. It must have a unique name, one that is both familiar yet distinctive. When people think of high fantasy, they think Warhammer, Warcraft, War Axe, War Sword? No. When people Google it, they'll get pictures of war swords. It needs to be something unique, something no one has thought of before. Wait, I've got it! Warcow. We'll call it Warcow. It'll be a meme. Is that how memes work? I still really don't understand memes. We could have a Texas Longhorn with an axe, or a Jersey with a blunderbuss. I'm just throwing things out at this point. I've got nothing. You might have heard of Corvus Belli's game Infinity. You may also have heard about how legendarily tough Infinity is. But what if I told you that Corvus Belli have taken the core rules of Infinity and redesigned them using the collected wisdom of decades of miniature and board game design? And they have produced this. Warcow. Warcrow. Warcrow. Quick little impartiality blurb. Corvus Belli have reached out and sponsored this video about Warcrow. They have asked for a critical review as well as my honest thoughts on the miniatures and some tags and affiliate links. And I've got a big problem to start with because it's really good and I really like it. Warcrow is Corvus Belli's fantasy skirmish game. The elevator pitch is to imagine Infinity, their venerable cyberpunk game, except much easier to learn and play. Warcrow is like someone poured Infinity out of a pan and boiled off 3/4 of the rules and synthesized the remainder down into a system that you can learn in a few minutes, yet somehow managed to keep the tactical game intact. Warcrow is like taking a pot of red wine jus from a Michelin-starred restaurant and then pouring that directly into your mouth. The combat mechanics have been completely turned on their head. It's incredibly easy to explain, and it's also deep enough to lead to several head-scratching list-building ideas. Also, the magic system might be my favourite magic system ever, in anything, and I buy random role-playing games just to read them. It's everything you can hope for in a magic system. Well, there might be one or two things you will need to be aware of before diving in, but don't worry, we will get to them later. First, here is how the combat works. This is your unit. There are 4 of them. They cost 20 points. It says this on their profile card. Yes, this game has profile cards, cards that even show you what the model's weapons do. Praise the Lord and the sweet baby Jesus. This is what Infinity needs. For this Bucklerman unit, while there are 3 or more models in the unit, you use these dice to attack and defend. If there are 2 or less models in the unit, you use these dice to attack and defend. The defender, in this case some orc hunters, rolls this many dice of those colours. The attacker rolls this many dice of those colours. Full shields cancel out full hits. Each uncancelled hit deals 1 damage. When taking damage, note that each model in the unit has 2 wounds, as shown here on the unit card. If a character joins a unit, push their card under the unit's card and add their bonus dice to your unit's attack or defense roll. If you are in cover from a ranged attack, you add a specific coloured dice to your defense roll depending on the type of cover. And that's it. Imagine running that as a demo game. Explaining it takes literally 20 seconds. Or probably 30 depending on how many seconds it just took me to explain it. So you're probably thinking, but hold on now, we've gone too far. This sounds too easy and too basic. If I know my audience, you are almost certainly asking questions like, did I leave the oven on? Is the food waste this week or next week? And where is Warcrow's tactical crunch? Well, takeaway food doesn't require an oven, the food waste gets thrown over the neighbour's fence when they aren't looking, and Warcrow's tactical crunch is delivered in 4 stages. Stage number 1. Some units can take a stress token to add extra dice or symbols to their roll. Stage number 2, just like Infinity, you can reactivate units, taking a stress token each time you do so. If you have more stress than your morale value at the end of the round, you need to take a morale test to avoid falling back, rolling the dice on your willpower characteristic and looking for hits. Stage number 3. If you've managed a successful charge, i.e. an uninterrupted straight line into combat, you can re-roll your attack roll, so blocking these routes off is imperative. Stage number 4. You might have noticed that the dice have other symbols on them, and you can use these symbols to trigger bonus effects called switches for the unit and any attached characters that will add extra damage or other effects into the result of your roll. Your bucklermen will use their shields to avoid being hit, some orc units can hit enemies in combat as they are being hit themselves, and rangers can disengage from combat. There is even a unit that can disarm enemies with their whip. And that's combat. There's no pausing to work out the attack modifiers, no checking each individual special rule in the rulebook to see if any of them interact with your dice roll, no stratagems, no armor saves followed by other armor saves followed by feel no pain armor saves, no checking to see if each model is in base contact, no gotchas. You don't even need to worry about allocating hits. The character is the last one in the unit to die. If the unit has no character, it will have a leader model instead. Now, I know from the results of a community survey that many of you are against using custom dice in a game, but using custom dice to represent the difficulty values of certain abilities does a huge amount of heavy lifting when it comes to teaching this game. If a unit comes at you with a bunch of red dice, you know that they mean business. If they come at you with a bunch of yellow dice, they mean significantly less business. Also, the box set comes with all the dice you will ever need. You cannot roll more than 3 of each colour for a test. If the tests ever need more than 3, the next dice will move up or down a difficulty colour instead. And unlike Infinity, no one gets left behind. At the end of the round, units that weren't activated by your orders will get to take a no one gets left behind move to move up and into position for the next turn. The only thing that you need to be aware of are the 16 keywords that these units can have. These are your usual abilities to represent scouting troops, intimidating creatures, or elite units that can change hollow symbols to regular symbols after a roll. But the whole terms and keywords section of the rules only takes up 3.5 pages, so it's nice and easy to refer to. With all things like special abilities and even range modifiers taken into account on the unit's cards, it allows the actual rules to be a streamlined 60 pages long, although it actually weighs in at 54 pages of rules text. Compare that to nearly 200 pages for Infinity. I know that learning rules is easily the most stressful part of learning any new system, and Warcrow's is as smooth as a buttered weasel. And they can use that quote on the packaging. But that isn't even the best bit, because we have to get to the magic system. Now, in miniature wargaming, there is an argument for more simplicity in wargames to make it easier for confused elderly players like myself to understand. Magic, or psychic powers, have been effectively removed from Warhammer 40,000 these days, either being folded into army special rules or stratagems, or just used as a keyword for certain weapons. However, Warcrow's magic will make you sweat, in a good way, like in a sauna, not in a why do I feel a pain in the left side of my chest kind of way. So, casting a spell is a simple action. You roll the number and colour of dice on your willpower value, and you need 1 success. If you do that, then you've cast your spell. That was easy. That was too easy. Because you don't just want to cast your spell, you want to alter your spell. Each magic user has a menu of spells they can cast, and each spell has a set of alterations that you can attach to it. You could make it longer ranged, or make it more powerful, or give it extra effects. Each alteration makes the spell harder to cast, as your opponent gets to roll black dice in opposition to it. Any full blocks they roll will cancel out full hits you roll in the same way as combat. Regardless, you still only need 1 success to make your entire spell go off, freezing or burning or doing whatever you want to your opponent's models, as you would expect. However, abuse of magical forces in Warcrow has consequences. Any hollow blocks your opponent rolls will permanently add tinge to your spellcaster. Tinge tokens represent the physical changes your spellcaster suffers as a consequence of using excessive amounts of magic. You can pile tinge tokens on your model and they will still move around and act normally, even if they are growing multiple heads and arms at the same time. Although each one will add a dice for your opponent every time you cast a spell from now on. Except if your opponent is rolling dice to counter spells and they roll at least one hollow special symbol, this means that every single tinge token fires off in order up to the number of tinge tokens your spellcaster has. With just a couple, it's just a little bit of stress and allied units around them being frightened. At 4, your mage becomes a dangerous, intimidating force on the battlefield, cowing friend and foe. And at 5, your spellcaster will just instantly explode, damaging everyone around them as the magical energies tear them apart. Oh ho ho, glorious risk and reward. Of course, each black dice only has a 1 in 8 chance of that hollow special symbol appearing, but any more than 3 black dice and you start rolling blue dice and the chances double. So now I've dosed you with a good hard introduction to the game, what about the products? The starter box set is Warcrow Winds from the North. It comes with everything that you need, including dice, scenery and an introductory booklet that will take you through each part of the rules and even into a mini campaign. If you get it and you like it, you can buy the imaginatively titled Warcrow Beyond Winds from the North. So it passes the Christmas morning test where everything you need is in the big box and there is no running around to find extra rules or models before you can play. It also passes the retailer test. I know there are many games out there these days that give everything away for free and then their players end up wondering why their local game shop doesn't support it. Your game shop will support Warcrow, assuming in fact that they can keep it in stock. As of early 2025, Winds from the North was completely sold out in the UK, although as of the recording of this video I can see it in stock on Element Games' website. Let's just take a moment to enjoy the happy feels. You know there's a big but coming here, don't you? There has to be. It's me. Okay, done. To be honest, I've only really thought of a few issues you might have with this game, and they mostly come down to personal preference or personal circumstances. First, some typos have crept into the rules and annoyingly into the unit profiles as well for the Wraithmane and Prime Warrior, but you can see updates on Warcrow's FAQ page and use a pen to update your profile cards. Secondly, if you suffer from a specific type of colour blindness, you might be unable to tell the coloured dice apart during play. The profile cards do have tiny letters on them to differentiate them, but dimly lit game shops might mean that gaming for some people is going to be trickier than if you just had a list of stats and numbers. Thirdly, the individual units are £40 to £50 RRP for a box of 4 models with no alternate build options. For comparison's sake, as of the recording of this video, the going price for 5 Games Workshop injection moulded plastic infantry models is £40, and for reasons, £40 is sometimes the price of a box of 10 Games Workshop plastic infantry models as well. That being said, plenty of current games like Star Wars Legion, A Song of Ice and Fire and Marvel Crisis Protocol all have these kinds of prices for their products. Money is always a tricky nut to crack for people. You'd need to factor your personal circumstances, how much game you get for your money, how many models you actually need to buy to complete a full army, the resale value for the product, and how long the company will actually continue to support the game for. A final point, at the moment everything produced for Warcrow apart from some promo miniatures is made from Cyocast. Cyocast is a plastic resin material that works as a good replacement to metal miniatures due to it being lighter, cheaper and easier to work with. Cyocast gets a solid B rating from me. Games Workshop injection molded plastics are the gold standard A rank, while resin and metal miniatures are still in my opinion C tier due to either being too fragile and brittle or being too heavy and too prone to paint chipping and deforming. I'd love these models to be made from unicorn plastic like the newer tags that Corvus Belli do, but that means getting the miniatures produced and shipped from China on batch rather than in Corvus Belli's in-house casting facility. And honestly, that's about it for the negatives section. I've been trying to think of more, but it's just a good game. I mean, it's not Warhammer and it's not connected to an existing IP, so getting traction in gaming groups is always going to be a struggle, but hold that thought for now, because we need to talk about the miniatures themselves. These sculpts are really nice. I mean, this is all coming down to personal preference and it's a very subjective area. The miniatures in Winds from the North all come in individual plastic bags, so there is no worry about losing a part of them. The humans are 32mm scale, similar to Games Workshop, and so larger than the figures you might be used to if you play Infinity. The orcs are pleasingly larger than the humans, but are balanced well on their bases. People have said that they look generic. I think the hegemony look like high fantasy versions of Spanish infantry, which makes sense as Corvus Belli is a Spanish company. My favourite model from Winds from the North might be the War Surgeon with his crow mask. Very thematic, very nice. The orcs look a lot like Warcraft orcs, and due to the current state of Activision Blizzard, Warcrow is probably as close as we are going to get to Warcraft the miniature game. Talking about that, I've noticed that the music that Corvus Belli uses on their channel is very Warcraft inspired. I'm getting incredibly strong Elwyn Forest ambient vibes in some places. Despite these miniatures looking like plastic, it's actually Cyocast, a plastic resin material, so you do need to be careful here and dry fit them together because superglue really only gives you one shot to get it right, and prying them apart will result in them snapping. I recommend using a superglue with a fine applicator, a hobby knife, sprue nippers, and a 150 grit coarse sanding stick. The humans all fit together quite nicely, the arms just slot on, concealing any gaps in the shoulders. The only issue is with Albork, the main orc character model, who has some major gapping around his left shoulder, as well as some other smaller gaps on the leader of the orc hunter's right shoulder that will need to be fixed with some modelling putty. The only other issue I could spot was a small area on Albork's sword where the detail was slightly missing. That and the area on the orc weapons between the blade and the hilt. Luckily, as it's Cyocast, a few minutes with a hobby knife can easily clear it up. To be completely fair to Cyocast, I think that a lot of these issues are actually down to how the miniature has been sliced up in order to be cast rather than the material used. But even with these issues, the box set should only take you an evening's work to assemble. The recommended game size is 250 points, and after you have both Winds from the North and Beyond Winds from the North, you will find that you have a surprisingly large chunk of that already. The human, dwarf and elf coalition of the hegemony of Embersig comes to 160 points. Meanwhile, the orcs and trolls of the northern tribes come to 185 points. In fact, if you picked up the limited edition pre-order exclusive model Alwart the Ice Bear that came with them, you can make that 245 points straight up. But before you blow all your cash, it's best to know that when you actually create an army to play a game, you get order tokens equal to the numbers displayed on the unit cards. You'll notice that only characters contribute them. So you will want to put some thought into how to balance out your army if you want those units you've just purchased to actually contribute to the battle at hand. Obviously, miniature war games being as they are, you are probably going to want to buy other boxes to mix and match into your army to make it a bit better, or to take advantage of the excellent other sculpts, like the flamboyant Black Legion aggressors, or the ice archers of the Varanak trolls who can fire volleys of freezing arrows over the heads of their allies. It's not Warhammer, I know, but because this is Corvus Belli we are talking about, Warcrow is built to be a long-running game system. This is not an IP-based flash-in-the-pan like the plethora of Star Wars or Marvel-based games that vanish without a trace once the company can't afford to pay the rights. Warcrow has 6 factions planned out, 7 if you include the Merchant Alliance, and there are lore blurbs in the core book for over a dozen unit types for each faction on their way over the months and probably years into the future. including unique characters, cavalry, and some cool looking large models like a giant Mount Haven dwarf mecha called the Titan and the Feudum's Mistguard Griffin Riders. If you purchase the Warcrow Adventure Dungeon Crawler board game, you can play with the Scions of Yadabaoth that came with the game, as long as you pick up a pack of the faction cards in the Yadabaoth card pack, assuming you can pronounce Yadabaoth to the person behind the tills in the game shop and they know what you're talking about. The Wood Elf adjacent group, the Sayen, is their newest faction. Their action pack contains a unit of archers, a smaller unit of skirmishing assassins, a bard, a druid, a named Grand Captain, as well as a four-winged character model that I'm not even going to try and pronounce the name of. I'm just going to ping it up on the screen and encourage you to have a go yourself. This box is released alongside a general combat unit, the Grove Curtailers. Other than that, I'd say the future looks pretty bright for this particular game system. If you want more Warcrow related content, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, please subscribe and I'll see you next time.